Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for an episode with some of America's premier architectural photographers. Today's broadcast comes from a recent Zoom meeting of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This discussion is led by AIAP Director Alan Blakely. We hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. Now, on with the show.
I want to welcome everyone to the January 2025 AIAP discussion, and tonight's a question and answer session, and we're recording this in the evening. We'll see how this goes. So far, I'm not sure we gain much, but we'll see. We'll see if anybody chooses to join us later. No format here, and there's no agenda. We just wanted to open this to questions. The last time we did this, we went on for several hours, so we'll see what happens tonight. But again, welcome to everybody. And I just want to start off with a quick question, and I'll start the ball rolling here. And the question I have is anybody here actively mentoring anybody? As I look around and see kind of the collective ages of all of us, I'm just wondering, are we doing anything to kind of enhance the industry as far, going forward and bringing some new photographers online? Just curious what your experience has been in that regard.
I've done 2 photographers through NPPA.
Okay.
One didn't work out because he was so busy doing all the right things. He was a student at Northwestern. He just didn't have any. My expertise is in business practices. He never asked for help. He worked all the time. He interned for money. He was shooting during the holidays for newspapers, and he was fine. And then I mentored a young woman who was great, and I'm now mentoring actually a family friend who's a trained graphic designer, but is more interested in photography. So I'm talking with him about business. He, as everybody, all of us at some point or another, is concerned about pricing and contract terms and so forth. So that's what we've been concentrating on, but we'll move on to other things. His website needed work, and he understood immediately that I was correct in my assumptions, in my opinions.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I hear most from other photographers who are just starting out is the question about pricing. How much should I charge? And then I ask, then I kind of pushed it a little bit and asked them what is they're charging for, because most of the time they're not really sure what it is they're charging for as far as licensing and usage rights and things like that. And so there's an education that has to happen there. But that seems to be the most common thing, is that people coming into this business don't really know what pricing should look like. And I'm not sure most customers do either, for that matter. But
yeah,
that's an interesting question for those that come in, and the response I get generally is, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
When someone asks me that, I always ask them, well, what do you want to make? There's a couple of photographers last year that called up with a lot of questions. One of them actually joined our group. And they were charging $1,500 for a day or $2,000 for a day. And that's kind of respectable, I guess. It's all right. But they were giving them, their clients, hundreds of photos with the price, wrong. But that's, what do they expect to make? And that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of people, they don't know what they're supposed to make. The new photographers have no idea. I don't know. Most of the photographers I found that are new, this is their side gig.
Mm-hmm.
And they're stunned when they find out, you mean you do this full time, for 30 years? Yeah, it's So that's a surprise to a lot of people that you can do this, that this can be your career. It should be your
I always tell people there's there's a few factors involved. One is new photographers, whatever their age, are never going to be able to, well, they're not likely to be able to charge as much as somebody with the experience.
Mhm.
Which is not always true and shouldn't always be true because some new photographers are very good. But in addition to that, I also I use these terms that people's eyes start to roll backwards in their head, but it's not complicated. It's cost of doing business and cost of living, COL, CODV. And I just say, look, all it is a list, two lists. You have on one side, how much does it cost you to live? What's your rent? What do you pay for food, clothes? Don't worry about vacations. Just what's the bare necessity for a month of that? Then what does it cost you to be in business for a month? The rental of the equipment or your studio if you have one or whatever it is, your internet. You take those and you add them up and then you divide them by a month, 30 days or something like that. How many days a month are you actually going to shoot? It's going to be maybe 1 to 3 days a week. You're actually going to be photographing most of the time. Then you take that and you divide that into that number that you came up with for the whole month. That's your minimum amount you should charge per day. And a lot of times it comes out to like $500 to $1,000. So that means you can charge more than that and you can have money for a vacation or maybe buy a tripod or something like, I'm being facetious here, but I mean, it's not a complicated way to figure out what the minimum is you need just to stay in business. And then you can extrapolate that over a whole year and so forth. That's putting aside the jobs that you might take because you need the work for your portfolio and they're not willing to, or able to pay, and you just do that anyway. But that, as we've discussed here many times, is not a long-term strategy for financial success.
Yeah. Barry, you've got very good presentation skills. I'm being sincere when I say that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've taught classrooms and I do all day workshops and class
it shows
lecturing. So yeah, well, you have to be, or you lose your audience.
So we should have this, Alan. This should be, let's ask Barry.
Oh, I'm for that.
We could actually do that.
We did do that. We did a version of that when you.
Yeah, we did actually. Barry has there's two podcasts. We split his interview into two shows, and there's some very interesting stuff there. And
I'll have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Very solid stuff, especially for somebody that's trying to figure out the business side of things.
Yeah. Which
seems to be a secondary thought for a lot of people who want to be in this business. And it should be the primary thought, maybe. I don't know. All of us here, are only here because we kind of figured out the business side of things.
No, that's true. It's not difficult being busy. The difficult part of our career is making profit, making money.
Yeah,
that's the hard part, getting paid.
Paying, buying a house and all that.
Alan, you interviewed Kyle Wege from Madison.
Sure.
And you did a podcast with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really great because he's right here in my state. And so I reached out to Kyle. We got together, had lunch together.
Oh, okay.
We was up in my area on assignment. And we had a really great talk about between the two of us about because he's really relatively new at being an architectural shooter, but he's done a super job.
Yeah,
and
he is.
We had a great discussion about, first of all, not price fixing, but and trying to stay away from that, but also about managing a rights managed business.
Yeah.
ASMP would call it. Rather than selling our time, we're selling the rights to the images that we're shooting. And he asked a lot of questions, and I told him from my own experience what works, what doesn't work. And the longstanding financial situation for me is just being able to retain the copyright and to
Yeah.
defend the copyright to images. And I know came away from the meeting. It was not necessarily mentoring, it was more sharing knowledge
Hmm.
than anything.
That's great.
And it was a great discussion.
Yeah, Kyle's a great photographer, and he's part of this younger group that I have high hopes for. He's talented, but he's also very methodical business wise,
Very.
and
Yeah.
open to advice and learning from those who have done it before him, and not
Mhm.
trying to figure it out all on his own. He's kind of in an interesting position as far as this group goes, because I don't know what Kyle's probably late 30s, I would think. Um,
Uh, yeah, or mid 30s, something
yeah,
in that neighborhood. Yeah.
not very old, and
No.
he's got a great business, and
Hmm.
he's been really good about maintaining his brand and having a brand and all the things that we
Hmm.
talk about here. He's listened to really well. I was really impressed with him,
Yeah.
and I follow him on social media. He does great work, and his clients like him really well. So
His biggest fear is what a lot of young people have, and that is, am I charging too much?
yeah,
Is that why I'm not getting work at times? Have I charged too much? And I've told him, there's a lot of times you just have to hang in there.
hmm
And if your work speaks well for itself, I mean, ultimately you're going to triumph. But there's going to be times that you may not get some work because other people are trying to lowball and coming in on it.
Well, he's in Madison too, and I
Mhm.
have a feeling that he probably competes with some of the student crowd that are trying to do things cheap, and
Exactly. We talked about that.
yeah. So that's kind of tough situation, and we all kind of deal with that to a certain extent.
Mhm. Anytime you're located in any larger metro area, you're going to run into that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that, Phil. I appreciate you sharing that.
He's
That's
he's a great
very
young man.
encouraging.
I have great hopes for him.
Yeah, that was an interesting interview. If you haven't listened to that
It is
podcast,
great.
it is very interesting.
Mhm.
He's a great kid. Kid, I should say. He's not a kid, he's
We
younger.
all know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a
Um,
term of endearment for people of a certain age.
It is, yeah.
I
That's
don't
one.
want to come off sounding like my parents and grandparents, so I better be careful with that. Yeah. Other questions that are on your minds right now? I know Norman's worried that he's not busy in January, but I don't think anybody is, but maybe I'm wrong. So
Yeah, I was talking to Alan earlier last January. We were swamped last January. It
mm,
was a killer. And this year we're finding time to archive and put things away, clean the studio and build sets and you know, we had a few pretty good sized projects we were supposed to do in December that are on hold because the designers are having difficulties getting their custom fabrics and furnishings and stuff done. We've experienced that all year last year, but
yeah,
so it's different, because we're usually pretty busy in January and this year we haven't been. So
I've had a couple slow months here, and part of that's by choice, but I've also had a lot pushed back because of weather events and natural disasters and things like that. That I think some of you are experiencing the same kind of thing, and to Norman's point, I think there's some real supply chain issues in getting these projects online for people.
yeah.
Because I've had a couple that have pushed back, more than once, and it's because the furniture wasn't there, or something just didn't show up yet, so it couldn't be photographed. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I think since COVID, the interior designers particularly, they're having a really tough time with their workshops getting stuff done and getting and I don't understand why that isn't ramped up by now, but That's consistent across the board. I shoot for a lot of designers, and they're all having the same problem. So, and it's not just in Chicagoland. I mean, we travel, and they're all having the same problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. I'm curious to know, I want to ask this question, and maybe this is a good forum to ask it. And I'm just curious what your mix is as far as your clientele. I'd be interested to hear from each of you on, architects versus interior designers versus construction companies versus manufacturers, those kinds of things. Anybody willing to kind of start off and give us an idea what your client mix looks like?
I would say for me, it's about a third, third, and a third.
Okay.
1/3 manufacturers, 1/3 architects, and 1/3 contractors.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's I think we shoot more than 50% for designers.
Really?
Yeah, and then commercial contractors are probably 20%. Residential builders are probably another 20%. And then we have the rest filling in is just, small manufacturing or product photography, things like that. But the majority of our work comes from interior designers, high-end interior design. And that's a good segue because if a designer is having a project shot, oftentimes the builder will be interested in that, the architect will be interested in that. Sup Furniture supply companies or textile companies, and you get some wonderful multi-party licensing off of that because the interior designer, when they have a photo shoot done, they come in, we spend the time staging everything.
Right.
It's a lot different than when you're shooting for a portfolio for a builder I mean, it's and I find that most of the people will wait for that till the designer shoots the project. But that's a nice way to introduce some multi-party licensing and pick up some new clients.
Are those commercial designers?
And with commercial or residential, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, same thing with the commercial too.
Yeah, those are the best photo shoots by far.
They are
As far as
absolutely.
the images that you end up with,
Yeah,
is it where the designers are driving the photo shoot?
yeah, and we'll get a shot list from the designer, but I'll make sure that we reach out and get a shot list from the builder or from a specialty company. And oftentimes they'll show up in the shoot and request shots. So it really works out well. And the designer likes to have the extra input because it lowers their overall cost with the multi-party licensing. So everyone benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always surprised when people tell me, no, we're not interested in a multi-party agreement.
Yeah, I'm not interested in saving any money.
I mean, I say, 30 to 40% less. And they go, no, we're just, okay, But
And then they call you back in a month or 2 months and want the
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, Bob wants pictures. Oh, too late for Bob.
Yeah. I mean, I had that happen today. And it's 3 months on from when we made the offer, and I'm sorry, that ship has sailed. But
well, and it's
kind
hard
of
for them.
puzzling.
Yeah, you try and explain, look, if I know in advance what people want, I will shoot for them.
Yeah.
Yes, it's more work for me, but it's more money. So I'm happy to, if you have an architect and a landscape architect, neither of them are interested in all the same photos. And so it's a no-brainer. Well, to me.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I do have, some clients that are really, I shot a job where I didn't even know that they were thinking about doing multi-party. So I did it after the photography was done, and it was great. It tripled my fee in the end.
Yeah.
They said, hey, we found some other partners. And I think they felt this is a new client for me, so I don't know. I suspect it may be because they, didn't know how good my photos are going to be. But they were very proactive. It was great. I was happy to give them a post-job discount because of that. I'm not,
Nice.
I don't have strict rules, and everybody got the same photos, the exact same series there were 8 photos, and everybody got the same thing, and they were happy. It's great.
So much easier to do it that way.
Yeah.
I usually present, and maybe I've mentioned this before, but I usually present that multi-party licensing breakdown in my estimate. When the first person calls me, let's say if it's a designer or architect or whoever, I give them that breakdown right when I give them the estimate, so that they're thinking about, yeah, I can bring some other people on board and I can cut my fee, in half or less, if I bring enough people on. And so they're usually pretty proactive about doing that. Some not so much. They don't really want to share, but
I think that is part of it, though.
yeah,
They don't want to share, and there's no comprehending why that would be, but it's not my problem.
yeah. One of the things that is always a little bit troublesome is that there are, I think I don't know if it's most, but there's a large number of photographers in this industry who will just split a single fee multiple ways. So, say that fee is $5,000 and there's 5 parties, they each pay $1,000.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And this makes me crazy on a regular basis, because I get that fairly regularly from people who just expect, they'll tell me at the outset, and that, so and so and so and so will be splitting this fee with us. It's like, wait a minute.
That's exactly the scenario I had in December. It was we were shooting a historic hotel in Chicago. They were putting a coffee shop in it, and the commercial designer hired me, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm splitting this photo shoot with the hotel."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, you're not."
Yeah, sorry.
That's not the way it works. And she goes, "Well, that's the way I told them." I said, "Well, that's not the way it works." And I explained it to her, and but a lot of people do that. They think that, well, with multi-parting, you're just cutting it up, and they don't realize that that's not the way it works. But
well, but honestly, in my local market, that is the way it works. That's the photographers that I compete against here locally. That's exactly what they do. They'll split it by how many ever parties want to be involved in it.
Well, the argument that I use is, I start talking about the advantage to licensing is that I can track the images. So there's some concern that these won't get used by people that you don't want to use the images, because I'm paying attention to that. And then I use the other argument, which is I'll take pictures that you don't want, but that they want, or that they want that you don't want, and I'll make sure that I get them so that everybody gets everything that they really want. And I start talking about that, and as to make it look like, well, it's more of a service, that I'm really looking out for the interest of my client. These are some of the ways that I do that. And I think they don't always understand what I mean when I'm talking about how licensing will protect them and how my retaining control over the images is protection for them, but they appreciate that I'm saying it.
Mm-hmm.
When you do a multi-party license, like when we do it, and we do multi-party, the discount only applies if they all use the same images, correct? That's the way you do it?
No, I mean, I'll do whatever.
Oh, really?
As long as I make.
You're that guy.
That guy. Well, I mean, so for instance, this one that I just mentioned,
I heard about you.
Yeah. This was interiors of a lab, and I couldn't even, none of us could even use the name of the lab.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, I didn't have to sign an NDA or anything, but I didn't think there were going to be any. I'm sure I asked in advance. I've shot another job for this same company, a landscape job. This was a lab, completely different. So they're a full service architect or design firm. Anyway, after the fact, they come to me and they say, we have multiple parties, and I can charge a fair fee and triple my fee. In the end, I'm not going to turn that down. But I try to set it up in advance so that everybody gets what they want. But I also say, look, if you come to me after the fact, I can't give you a discount,
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly can't license you images for less than my original client paid, because that would be evil on my part.
Yeah.
And so, step up. And usually that does it. If they're ever going to sign up, that's the thing that makes them do it.
So how can you make that work? Like if I have a party that's using the same image, well, that image gets marked up and then divided by two parties or three parties or four party, whatever it is. And I have a progression of increases in the costs as it's divided by parties, but it's the same image. So if I have a client that wants this picture and this one wants this picture, how does that work in a multi-party? I mean, I
Well,
don't think that works.
if I know they're going to do, they want different photos than other parties want, then in my own little brain, I just think of it as a separate. It's a completely separate contract anyway. I write separate contracts for everybody, and I just price it as though I was shooting just for them, but with a discount. That's the only way that I can make sense out of it. Because one party might want 15 photos, but another party might want 10
Yeah.
or 8 or something. So I just try to come up with something, knowing, by the way, that they may talk to each other,
Mhm.
that I'm not going to give them so big a discount that my original client, for instance, is going to be pissed off.
One thing that I've experienced, and maybe some of you have too, is finding out that I've got clients who are actually selling my images. So I've gone into a situation where I've thought that they were the only participant in, in this licensing agreement, and then I found out later this happened with an interior designer, and it's happened with others, but the most notable case was an interior designer who then priced the images for a contractor and a landscaper, and I think a couple other parties, and actually made money on the photo shoot. Paid me my fee, but ended up, with a positive balance, having sold the images to other parties, and it ended up being a really messy litigation. But I'm just wondering if that's something that anybody else has ever had to cross.
I had it happen one time, and getting burnt once was all. I really make it very clear up front that I'm selling you usage rights. You have no right to resell these to other people. I would gladly entertain. Another thing is I definitely handle all the invoicing. I'm not going to sell a group of photos to one person knowing that they're going to share them with somebody else, and they think, well, I'll just invoice them for half of
Yeah.
the job. Well, you know what? Their name's not going to be in the metadata for having control of the usage rights. So that's not going to work out. It seems like we all have to get burnt at least once. It's you get your hand on that stove and okay, it's hot.
Yeah, I've had a commercial client resell our images to designers in Italy. I shot some hotels, the designers were in Italy, and they sold them pictures. And I had another instance where a large food chain in Chicago, we shot it for the builder, and he sold the food chain the pictures. So um, it has happened before. I had one builder do it too. But like Alan, you just have to stop that. And unfortunately, you have to litigate it. It makes you, what's bad is it makes you, for some reason, the photographer's always the bad guy, and all we're
Well,
doing
yeah.
is standing up for our rights.
Yeah.
And I don't like when we get postured as the bad guy, because I'm not stealing from anybody, but you're stealing from me. So
Yeah, I had a guy that has infringed dozens of my photographs, and he called me up yelling, last week, and said, "Well, they warned me about you." And I thought, well, they should have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It makes you crazy. I've also had people who wanted to, and this has happened in Denver for some reason, but there is a pricing model that I guess there's some photographers in Denver have used, where if the original client finds enough other participants, then the original client pays nothing. And for me, there always has to be some compensation from everybody in order to have a license. And so I didn't go along with that, and obviously I didn't get that project, but that was kind of a new one to me, to find out that they were expecting to not pay anything if they got other people to come on board. So That was a little strange.
Not uncommon, I think.
Really, that's interesting.
But not, I mean, my experience is not that has been, at least with the really big companies, the very professional companies, that is not an issue. But maybe my limited experience,
Well, I kind of want to switch gears here, and I'd like to get kind of a pulse on where everyone is as far as equipment and cameras, and where you are and where you think you're going. Because I'm personally using 10-year-old camera bodies, and I'm fine with that. I'm not sure that that's sustainable, but maybe it is. Because I mean, I send my camera bodies in annually, regardless of whether they need it or not, and lenses. So mine are well maintained, and so I can trust that they're going to function as they need to. But they are getting older, and I haven't seen a good alternative yet to replace them with. So I'm just curious where everybody is.
Yeah, this is a great subject because I've been talking about it all week with other photographers.
Oh,
I'm venting here. I use, as you guys know, I'm a Sony shooter, so I use two Sony A850s. They're 13 years old now. They are my favorite cameras. I use Sony and Minolta lenses. I do have a mirrorless camera, a Sony AR4, and it's a great camera. It's a fantastic camera. I hate it. I hate that digital viewfinder. Don't like it. I want a mirror and I want to lock it up, and I want to be able to and that's just me. And I'm still shooting with them. I was actually thinking about moving over to Nikon or to Canon, but I know those companies make DSLRs anymore. Canon just discontinued the 1DX, which is a bummer because that is a great camera, and Nikon just discontinued the D6.
If you do move over to Canon, I think Alan and I use the same camera, which is a 5DSR.
Yeah, that's a nice camera.
Yeah, it's a really nice camera. You can buy them used with very few shutter
actuations.
Thank you.
I just found some new old stock too. There's some new old stock out there.
I didn't know that. Well, you can buy them like in really good condition for $1,000 or $1,200.
Yeah,
that are basically new, but new. And what are you seeing for prices on the?
What are you using? A 5D what?
5D
5D SR.
Yeah.
SR. Okay.
That's
the 45 or 50 megapixel.
It's 50 megapixel, but the thing that makes it special is that it doesn't have an anti-aliasing filter. So it is super, super sharp. It's not a good camera for portraits.
It's too sharp for people.
Oh my God. I spent so much time. I never use it unless I absolutely just don't have a choice.
He puts motion blur in all his portraits.
Oh my God. It's too much, but it's very sharp. So it looks like a big fat medium format.
It does.
It's a big file. It's really
the files, sharpness wise, are comparable to the ones I was getting on my Fuji 100 megapixel body. Yeah. So
the dynamic range is not bad. I think it's not as good as some of the mirrorless, but
it's not.
I'm bracketing anyway, so
I'm all in on Nikon. Have been for pretty much all my shooting life. Two Z8s, and I really enjoy them on the shift lenses because I can use the pixel brightness on focusing, and boy, that is just a godsend for me as I keep aging and my eyesight is not as good as what it used to be. It's wonderful to have the pixels to be able to focus on, so to speak. That part of it.
So that's not a problem for me.
That is an advantage though about digital viewfinder. Yeah.
I basically just use something that I've had since I started.
Oh, tell us what it is.
It's a Canon 7D. I've been using that for Lord knows. It's been my camera for forever, along with Canon 1022 being the primary lens that I use. But I'm of the old school, says if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I'm not into the mirrorless cameras and all of the other stuff as well.
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah.
you need to make a picture bigger, I mean, in pixel size, you can use Photoshop or gigapixel.
Hmm.
So you could take a 24 megapixel and just make it 4 times that size. I mean, you don't need it most of the time, but who knows? It's nice to be able to know that it can be offered if a client requests it.
I'm really happy with got a D850 Nikon D850, and I bought their sharpest lens, or what they said was their sharpest lens, and I hardly use anything else now. It goes from 16 to 35, and it just covers everything I need.
Is that a shift? That's not a tilt shift though, right? That's a zoom lens you're using.
Yeah, zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, and it covers just about everything I need. Every once in a while, I have to pull out the wider lens when I'm shooting a tiny little bathroom or something, but I've got all these lenses I don't use now. I just basically use that, and it's got plenty of resolution. In fact, most of my clients don't need that much. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use that lens, the Canon version of that lens is on my camera 90% of the time.
Yeah, I use primary lenses almost exclusively, and my favorite, if I'm shooting architectural, my favorite lens to shoot are 20s or 24s. You know, I have an 11, but I usually don't go that wide because it's just doesn't look natural. But
Well, you know, changing subject just a second, Alan was talking about earlier about where we get most of our business from. Most of my business comes from interior designers, and I have loved that business, and that's where most of my money comes from, is from interior designers. I'd like to get some feedback from some of you guys about your experiences and your relationships with your interior designers.
I haven't had good experience, so I'll be quiet.
they complain about price constantly, but they're really good. I mean, I find that interior designers, I like shooting for them because they're fussy, and because when when you shoot a space for them, it's just beautiful. Especially, you know, if they come and they stage it and they work with you, and I find they're pretty loyal clients too. I've got some that
Absolutely.
I've been shooting for you know over decades, and they're loyal clients, and I just, you know, who doesn't complain about price? I guess our work, the work we provide, is expensive, but the people we're shooting for, the services they provide are expensive too. You know, you get
Oh,
what you pay
definitely.
for. So if you give them a quality product, I mean they're one of my favorite people to shoot for. I like that. The builders, you know, if you're shooting for a corporation, uh, they understand copyright better than anybody. There's usually no fuss with licensing, no fuss with multi-party licensing, and I like the professionalism of a corporate structure like that. But you know, the designers can be educated, and like I said, they're loyal clients. So
The designers can also be a great lead into other business,
absolutely, Phil. Yeah,
because
I
after the
found that
fact
too.
sales can really, frankly, all the months of December and most of January, I'm living off of royalties of selling images to other people
Yeah.
during that time. So it's a slow time as far as work goes, but the money is still coming in.
I would like to go ahead and interject in terms of clients. It seems like there's one category that has not been discussed. Most of my clients are, you know, architects, interior designers, and construction. But in the last 3 or 4 years, my number one goal is going up, not down. Is the developers. Here in Texas, the multifamily industry is a booming.
Yeah.
Businesses are in the Houston, Dallas, Austin
Yeah.
areas.
Same here.
Building multiple luxury high rises. You know, you turn around, there's a new one popping up. I like to go and the developers don't get the many phone calls as architects do from photographers. They're almost welcome that a photographer has reached out to them. Scenario: the architect may have designed a building, but that building is the developer's baby. And I'll go to open houses of brand new mid rises and high rises, introduce myself, give them a flash drive of some of their past projects that they've done. And when I went to their website, I say, it's okay, the images. And I show them some of the shots that I took of some of their past projects, and they go, whoa. And all of a sudden, I've got the next gig to the next project that's going to be completed in the next 3 or 6 months from now. But I find out that they appreciate a photographer going and doing their project. Once again, the architect, the interior designer, they're the doctor. The developer is the patient who's giving birth. That's who I go with first, and I've gotten a tremendous amount of responses from developers by going them and talking them to directly and going to their office to say, here's something on some of your past projects that that you may want to look at what I've shot for you. And that gives you an open door to look to continue the conversation on their next project. What are y'all's feedback on that?
No, thanks for bringing that up, Richard, because last month's meeting, when we talked about what was, the forecast for upcoming projects and business and things like that, that's exactly where we're expecting to see all the new growth, is in that kind of market. And so I think that was excellent, to bring that to our attention again. And I don't go after it.
I've already had booked 12 projects that are all multifamily, wow. Mid-rise, high-rises, senior communities that are the high-end, high-rise projects around the country. I got in Washington, Oregon, Vancouver, the West Coast, all from one developer who came into Texas. And this was their first entree into the Texas region. And the architect that I was dealing with saw my work and referred me to the developer. And I walked in, knocked on the door, says, here's some stuff that I've done that is similar to your project. And all of a sudden, I've got 12 assignments for this year. That's going to keep me busy throughout the next 6 months. But I always felt that I don't see enough reaching out to the developers. We're talking the high-end people who have multiple projects and reaching out to them because, in the long run, that is their baby versus they hired the architect, they hired the construction company or the interior designer, but it's their building. And that's what I want to showcase. And I find out in terms of shooting past projects with the right light, and we're using it on the ground or using a drone and capturing something that was not captured the first time, that really opens up huge venue doors to photographers. And I really want to emphasize reaching up to the top and working your way down, because when the developer says this is who I'm going to hire for a photographer, the architect and the interior designer construction say, yes, sir, thank you situation. So, it's hard to say no to the guy upstairs when you're looking at trying to photograph a project, but going out and introducing yourself to the higher ups, the decision makers, the project managers, all those people, and then the developer side really has opened up in the last 3 or 4 years for me and for a lot of other people here with the explosion of the multifamily industry.
Yeah, and the property development companies kind of fly under the radar as far as our business is concerned. And also real estate investment trusts, the REITs, that's a huge industry. And I've done business with REITs over the years, and they're some of the biggest spenders as far as properties and having properties all over the country that they need shot and those kinds of things. And those are projects that you never hear about if you're talking to an architect or a designer. So thanks for that. Yeah, that's really useful information. That's kind of a hidden market. And we only tend to find out about it secondhand sometimes when a developer is involved in a project that we're shooting for an architect. But
yeah, well, I wrote those states down, so I'll be
The question goes to guys.
No, that's really good, Richard. I'm glad you said that because I don't go after that. I've worked with developers, but I don't pursue
Yeah,
it.
as far as multifamily and also senior living and medical,
And medical is nice.
real estate investment trusts are pouring huge money into those areas right now, and those projects are all going to have marketing people on the developer side that you can talk to that probably no photographer will ever contact.
Exactly.
I had a situation that started about a year or so ago where I was contacted through my website from a company, and they were looking for a photographer to record the progress of a high rise being built for senior citizens here in Columbia. And I just went out and I took these pictures, gave them about 50 shots each time. And this went on every month. They wanted me to give them the progress every month. And we did this for a solid year. They were so happy with what I had done and the fact that I was, reliable for them, and they liked my work. So when time came for making the marketing pictures, guess who got the job? I did, just because I did the other small stuff, but then I got the big one. So it worked out real good for me. So I kind of understand where Richard is coming from there.
Start to the top and work your way down.
There you go.
Yeah.
I've lived my whole life by those words.
We're just about to the top of the hour here. Anything else that we ought to talk about during this meeting?
Other than the fact that I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of it. I've learned an awful lot from you guys, and I'm sure y'all have a lot more experience than I do. But I'm actually getting to that point where I'm beginning to go slower. And as time goes by, it seems to slow me up a little bit. So therefore, at some point in time here, probably in the next few years, I'll probably just hang it up.
Oh, don't say those words. It's not so. We never retire.
You never retire.
I get that asked that all the time. When are you going to
I'm with you,
retire?
Norman. I probably will never retire either. So
Next time we should open this up to people, under 60, maybe.
Yeah. Stop putting this limit on it.
Well, I was sitting here looking at all of us, and I was wondering where the younger generation had gotten to, but that's okay. I'm just cutting up with you guys.
They're probably too busy working.
Yeah, they got a night shift. Well, I don't know.
It's just,
Well, if anybody has any suggestions how we can draw these people out, I'm willing to listen, because we do have a younger contingent as part of this group who are members, but
yeah, that's true.
we're just not seeing them here. So, well, gentlemen, thank you for your participation. We're going to wrap this up here. After we close, we'll continue if you'd like on the back side of this. But thanks for your generosity and your opinions and advice and information as always. And this recording will be up in about a week's time. And if you have any input as to what we talk about next month, I'd appreciate hearing from you. Until then, I wish you all the best. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted and may not be used in full or in part without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.